Alright. Okay, we've got this game remade, so I'm going back into it right now. And here we go. And this has completely changed the scenario here, actually, which is a very, very odd thing indeed. But I bring you once again Roots Yu-Gi-Oh!, who is now in the red trunks because they can't keep the same damn colors. And he is playing Zerg to the southeast now of Whirlwind versus his opponent, who is now in a closer ground position rather than cross. That is Axiom's Heart. He is in the blue trunks playing Terran to the northeast. Okay. Let's see how this goes then. So, Heart is a pretty cool choice for this. Hart had to battle through a lot of players to actually make his way into WCSNA. He's a great player. He took a pretty early fall. He was actually the one taking the earliest fall into the lower bracket, having run up against a difficult opponent. Ran into Koreans pretty early, and then he was able to make his way through the lower bracket. Hart's a really good player. I think a lot of people underestimate him. He is a guy that a lot of people assume is very much a cheesy player, which is not really the case. He used to be, certainly. But he's capable of playing these just big macro games now. Yu-Gi-Oh!, on the other hand, he's just a monster. Like, he is a destructive, evil Zerg. And he is really, really good at dealing with anything you can throw at him. I don't think he really has a bad matchup at this stage. I really don't. He dealt really well with the Skytoss style of Alicia, which is historically a very difficult style to beat. Want to see Command Center first here from Hart. This is very much in keeping, one, with the map, and two, with Hart's current playstyle, where he's like, I could cheese, no, CC first, lol. And that is actually a nasty style to play against, because you just can't be sure. Hart's got this reputation for cheesy builds, and yet he doesn't necessarily do them. Every time I see Hart put out in the GSTL, I always hear Kaldor and Wolf say, I wonder what cheese he's got planned. You know, all credit to them, they say he's actually been playing a macro style lately, but he has that reputation, and that's always something you've got to think about. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Knows that. He is well aware. But this doesn't really mean that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not going to be able to handle what's coming at him. CC first is definitely good for the Terran player, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not really going to be aggressive in this situation, so it's a small gamble by Hart, but it's absolutely fine. Does build it on the higher ground, just wants to make sure that he's walled off, because the worst thing that happens here is you go CC first on the low ground, the guy builds 6 lings, scouts you first, and then just kills you. It's going to be a pretty slow scout here from Yu-Gi-Oh! He's actually going to see an SCV come out, but he doesn't know whether or not that's actually a scouting SCV that was looking in that area, and in fact his opponent might be here instead, or here. He can't be 100% certain of that. He has to make an assumption, really, and he's now moving into a position, simply because you can't just have your Overlord wandering around that area. A Marine will kill it otherwise. Now he certainly knows where he is. Marine's going to move into position, and is not going to intercept that Overlord, doesn't actually see it. Can't kill it anyway, unless, of course, you were to lift up a building. We're going to immediately see a factory to follow this one up here from Hart. He is only on a single gas right now. Interesting to see what he decides to turn that into. A couple of lings on the field here for Yu-Gi-Oh! No overcommitment, which I always like to see. He is going to be going in a very much an economic kind of build. Not economical. That's actually not the same thing at all. I hear a lot of people say it's an economical build. It's actually not. Economical generally means that you are trying to save as much as you can. Economic, on the other hand, an economically focused build, that's a different matter entirely. Another CC. Greedy, greedy build. Here's the third coming down here from Yu-Gi-Oh! So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Not really in a position to apply too much pressure, so going for this third CC can work out. Hart is playing a little bit risky. He's going to basically rely on Hellions to keep map control and keep his base safe, because with the third CC, he has no production, and he really has no tech. Yeah? He only had that one gas, which was enough to get this running and get the reactor up. He may then add a tech lab and start to build units. But if Yu-Gi-Oh! Suddenly decides to turn on the pressure, then he can be in a lot of trouble. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course, is not showing any signs of building a Baneling Nest or any kind of early Roach Warren. He's now taking a second gas here. We'll see if he decides to go up to Lair and maybe just play a kind of Mutalisk heavy style. He might do that. He could play Roach Hydra, that's pretty effective too. Interestingly, Pneumaticized Carapace coming out pretty early here from Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a great scouting option. I mean, I absolutely love that he's doing it. It's going to give him some really great options there. This wall-off means that there's really no way Lings can do anything with no Baneling Nest or Roach Warren on the field. There is actually physically no way that he can attack. But he has to build a lot of Lings anyway, because he does see the Hellions coming up. What would be really cool for Hart, actually, is if he just stopped building Hellions and actually focused on different kind of production. Because with this many Lings out, these Hellions could end up getting shut down pretty hard without actually doing anything. Doesn't need to, of course, scout the third base, but he should know by this point that there's a Zerg third. Any Zerg's going to have built a third by this point. There's no real option because you know your opponent's going early CC. Engineering Bay coming up. Obviously, tech is delayed because of this build, but if he gets those 3 command centers down, then he's going to be an economic powerhouse going into this game. Double NG Bay going down again because you got the gas for it. Building Widow Mines defensively. Double Evo Chamber coming down here from Yu-Gi-Oh! That's actually delay. There we go. He's going to go for lair right now to say, that's delaying the lair, and suddenly he builds a lair. But there you go. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit croaky here. Hart's going to have a look around and see what he can see. He scouts, and he spots the third. Yu-Gi-Oh! Does have enough lings to kill this, but it's pretty dodgy. His Overlord's going to scout absolutely everything. That's the wonderful thing about Pneumaticized Carapace. I love that upgrade. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think more Zergs should build it. And Yu-Gi-Oh's got a lot of information now. Doesn't actually know about the third base, funnily enough. He actually hasn't spotted that yet. The Widow Mine moving into position as well. Overlord could very easily move there. I think, honestly, at this stage, Hart needs to build a Viking to deal with these scouts. Even then, it's not going to be fast enough. Hellions sort of menace. They haven't really done anything yet, so building those 6 Hellions really doesn't do anything. I mean, I suppose it forces some lings out of Yu-Gi-Oh! And he's actually currently sitting on 25, so maybe that helps, but this is a great spot for Hart to be in right now. On 3 bases, currently not being attacked at all. The thing is that once his opponent realizes, and he's going to realize right now, this may trigger Yu-Gi-Oh! Just to go and actually attack the third. There aren't really enough Widow Mines necessarily to stop this unless Yu-Gi-Oh! Gets really unlucky and blunders right into them, which is probably not going to happen. Infestation Pit coming down pretty early here, and Spire. I like that a lot. Against the 3-base Terran, the Spire is a very valid way of playing. The simple reason being it's very hard to defend 3 bases. Of course, it can still die to Widow Mines, so that's a possibility there, but this could be dangerous for Hart. He may have got... I wouldn't say he got too greedy, because any Zerg's really going to do this. They're going to put a Spire down because they see a third base. Like, yeah, sure, I'll build a Spire. Absolutely, that's the right option here. Because I can just harass and it's very hard to defend. But Hart could get punished for it. Currently, his opponent Yu-Gi-Oh! Is on 70 drones. He hasn't built that many units. He's only got 25 lings. But he does have the ability to power out units when he needs to. And with the Mutalisks on the field, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for Hart to actually attack. There's also that is a 10-minute 30 high from Yu-Gi-Oh! Hugely fast. Crazy fast. 2 reasons for that. Either you do it for Ultras, or of course you do it for Broodlords. You can throw Vipers in the mix there as well. I'd say, well, that's great against the composition, but actually he doesn't have a composition. He's like got 10 Widow Mines, and he's got 19 Marines, 2 Medevacs, and 6 Hellions, which is enough to hold any kind of ground aggression here, I feel. But it's this tech build that might catch him off guard. What is it, 4? It could be for either Broodlords or for Ultralisks. It's hard to say. Upgrades-wise, it's currently 1-1 in terms of melee, and that just makes me think it's Broodlords, you know? But it could just be to add a couple of Vipers into the mix. The reason I think it's Broodlords and not Ultralisks is because with only 1-1 done and 2-2 only just starting, if you start building Ultralisks right now, they're not going to be that strong. And you're going to be in a gas problem where you can't build all that many Ultras, and then that's easy to kind of kill with just a bunch of Marauders. Even Marines is pretty good there too. Mutas are successfully thrown back without doing any damage there. There's plenty of Marines there for Hart as well. Hart is also trying to push the creep spread back and start to be super annoying with all of these Widow Mines. There's actually no Overseer on the field, so this could end up being really, really nasty. Yeah, this is really, really good push coming in here. Let's see. Oh, never mind. There is an Overseer. I actually misread that completely. There we go. Banelings on the field. No speed, though. So, not that dangerous against that Hellion Mine composition. Mines shut this down pretty hard. There we go. It is Broodlords. Yeah, it made logical sense. Obviously, you can transition through to Ultras as well, but getting Broodlords out at this stage is a pretty good idea. You get a few Corruptors to shut down drop potential, and then you start to build Broodlords, and suddenly Hart ends up in a really horrible spot because he doesn't have any Vikings. So, yeah, that can work, definitely. Drop coming in here from Hart is going to move around the side. Currently, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is sort of contained, and the Terran is just sitting happily on 3 bases, taking away. And there's been no harassment coming in here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Either, so it's a good spot for the Terran to be in. He's very close to being maxed out, and there's not going to be that many Broodlords coming in from Yu-Gi-Oh! There's going to be like 4, yeah? And that's nasty. Broodlords are really, really good, but are they that good? Probably not. Not against the number of units that Hart has. Hart's about to have 2-2, so his upgrades are going to be slightly ahead of his Zerg opponent. He is going to be going against Baneling speed. Building 14 drones right now, I think, was actually a huge mistake. Heart's going in for the engagement there. The Widow Mines didn't really pop on anything useful. I think he's just relying on spines and a lot of static defense here. Building 14 drones, though, that was kind of the worst time for that to happen. There's actually a very small army here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh!, however, has elected to build a lot of static defense, and Heart is a little bit slow to respond to that. He is able to drop in a good position, so he will be able to kill several units, especially with 2-2. So the response time from Yu-Gi-Oh! Here is relatively slow. That forces his opponent away. He's going to try and kill some static defense, but he's not going to be able to take that down. He's now focusing just on the queens and taking out as many drones as he can. And a little bit of slow response time here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, because he's being dropped all over the place. Big drop into the main base, an attack on the third, and an attack going... Oh my god! The Widow Mines kill Heart's army! That was horrible! And this is why Widow Mines are not guaranteed kills. Heart loses the majority of his attacking force thanks to Widow Mines, and Heart's offensive is suddenly completely shut down thanks to his own Widow Mines. That was horrible. And the thing is about Broodlords that... Broodlords, and I know this sounds weird, are a counter to Widow Mines. You're like, what? Why? Why are they a counter to Widow Mines? Because of Broodlings. Broodlings are so dangerous against Widow Mines. They force Widow Mines to fire at the biocomposition on the ground. It shuts it down really well. Of course, the other possibility is that Heart's able to get Drilling Claws out and actually get those mines beneath him. But Heart just lost a huge army there, and he didn't really do that much economic damage. I say that much, he killed 24 workers, but even then, his opponent had so many anyway. Yu-Gi-Oh's such a big economically focused player. Now Heart's got to go for a second push. He does have Drilling Claws here, but against Broodlords, again, these mines aren't going to do anything. I would actually have to see a mine drop here. You know, that would be so cool. If he picked up some mines, dropped them directly below the Broodlords, that would actually be a really good way of dealing with them. They're probably not fast enough to get away from that. But right now, drop-wise, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is pretty safe. He's got a lot of static defense. Huge amounts of it. There's like a wall of spines here, and lots of Spore Crawlers going behind it as well. So drops are going to be very difficult to actually use effectively here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, bear in mind, on 4 bases. He is mined out of his main, almost, but he's still mining from 3 active mining bases. Heart, on the other hand, is looking pretty good at his natural, but is getting mined out at his main, so he's only going to be on 2. So we're going to have to see a good engagement here from Heart, but a great fungal here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually locks down a lot of those mines. Great play here. Got to be so careful. Oh, you can't use mines against Broodlords. You can't do it. This is why. You just cannot safely use them. The only approach I think you've got here is to actually drop them underneath the Broodlords. Because otherwise, Heart is actually going to lose this engagement. In fact, that's exactly what's happening. Big drop comes in again. Heart's going to be able to borrow a huge amount of Widow Mines and go right into the main base. Needs to kill that Spore Crawler before he loses that Medivac. He's able to do that quite nicely. And the thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that he can still get pulled apart by big, well-upgraded drops. 3/3 is coming in here as well. So some damage has been taken, but Heart is not really doing a huge amount of damage to the economy of his opponent here. This Medivac is probably going to die. Actually, it pulls back. So what Heart is doing right now is he is building Ravens, which is a really interesting move. The mines aren't really going to do anything. He needs to actually move the mines back and use them defensively, not offensively, because they're just a liability. A couple of Widow Mines end up being deployed here, which is going to be a little bit annoying, certainly. In fact, that's going to be a lot annoying. There's like 5 Widow Mines in the main base. This is probably the best way to use the Widow Mines, actually. And we're going to see some dead Banelings there by the looks of it. Yeah, that's the best way to use them. Just drop them into the main base and just let them kill reinforcements. Well, there's a few Vikings donated for free. But Yu-Gi-Oh's still in a really good spot now. He's actually in a very good spot. Heart's actually forced away. This 4th base doesn't go down. There are not enough Vikings on the field to really kill these Broodlords, especially since he just donated a bunch of them. He's building Ravens to try and handle it, which can work, but with the Overseers in position, these Widow Mines actually aren't going to be good on the defense at all. And there's the GG. Heart gives up completely. Yu-Gi-Oh! With a great build completely shuts that down. And Heart went for the Mass Widow Mine, which, as it turns out, is really bad against the 10.5-minute Hive. Who knew, right? Yu-Gi-Oh! Crazy good. Alright, who does Axiom send out next? We will find out very shortly, folks. Maybe they send Ryung out, but I think Crank. I think Crank is a good option right now, because then if you lose Crank, then you can just bring Ryung out a couple of times to try and finish off Yu-Gi-Oh! Who is most likely going to end up being the ace, but they can still switch out for Sage again. So, Root is now in a much better position. They're now 3-2. Still behind, but not by much. Yu-Gi-Oh! Showing his skill here with some great builds. We'll be back very shortly to see whether or not he can even up the score. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're going to the next matchup right here. We might have to regame. No, it doesn't look like we will. Apparently we lost someone in the process, but either they weren't that important or it just bugged out, so never mind. Okay, we're going into this game, right? Oh, we lost cats. Okay, that's actually fine. We should be able to continue. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome here to Newkirk. And we're going to see a Terran versus Zerg in Newkirk. This could take a while. This man, Root Yu-Gi-Oh, is showing amazing skill and builds in this tournament. Good God. So cool. I love the idea of being able to use Broodlords against Mass Widowmine. That's a fantastic idea. As we saw for Heart, it actually completely murdered him. Heart was caught utterly off guard and was not able to transition against that at all. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Putting 2 on the board here for his team. He is in the red trunks and he is playing Zerg to the southeast. Looking to equalize it 3 for 3 here in this Axiom versus Root battle. Versus his opponent, it is Axiom Ryong. He is in the blue trunks and he is playing Terran to the southwest. Ryong's a really good choice here for obvious reasons. We're going to see CC first on the low ground. You greedy, greedy man. Seriously greedy. CC first on the low ground. But of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! Did go hatch first, so even if Yu-Gi-Oh! Goes pool right now, it's actually very unlikely that it can do damage. He's actually going to pool on 17 because he knows, right, I can't do damage here. He's pooling on 18? Uh-oh. The other 18 pool is really crazy, crazy. There's one other possibility here. Yeah, exactly. There we go. I was going to say, he's going to go 3 hatch before pool. There we go. That. You want to see greedy? Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh! Just took it up another notch. 3 hatch before pool is a build that, you know, 6 months to maybe a year ago, people would have said, that's insane, you can't do that. But you can. You actually can. Very much so. It's a great build. Very, very potent. Question is, does Ryong scout it? Does Ryong smell it? And can Ryong actually do anything about it? Like, CC first on low ground, 3 hatch before pool is a great response, but it is, of course, very, very dangerous. Depends what Ryong decides to do after this. I imagine he's just going to go for a very economically focused build. He may decide to do drop play. Ryong in this matchup is a bit of an enigma because he still uses a very old style at times. He will still use tanks, which almost no one else is using. But there are situations where you definitely want to be using tanks instead of Widowmines, like the last game. To be fair, I don't think that would have even helped there because the Broodlords would have still taken them out. There wasn't actually enough there, and the transition wasn't properly read by Heart. Admittedly, it was a 10.5-minute hive, which is, I think, the earliest I've ever seen in StarCraft 2. So he was caught completely off guard by that. He was not expecting that at all. Usually the hive comes down at maybe 12 to 12:30. But yeah, it was just nuts. It's a great build. Love it. Factory coming down, and we are seeing a reactor coming in as well. Reactor's a little bit late for a swap around, but that doesn't really mean anything. You can still see the swap around. It's going to be the 3cc build here from Ryong, which of course we saw from Heart as well. But I think this 3 hatch before pool method that Yu-Gi-Oh! Played is actually a really great way to deal with this. Hellions are obviously going to be a threat, especially on this third base. Stopping them is going to be difficult, but not impossible. It may even force Yu-Gi-Oh! To actually build static defense. Double gas coming down here for Yu-Gi-Oh! So we're not going to see any speed for a little while. And we're actually going to see, I think, Hellions coming out right about now. So this is going to be pretty gnarly to stop. And there's the Roach Warren coming down to do that. The problem with the Roach Warren is you've got 3 hatcheries. You have to defend all of this stuff. How do you do that? It's difficult. You can take a lot of damage here from Hellion run-bys. Even with queens. I mean, he's going to get 4 queens here. Maybe he gets even more than that. It's still difficult to defend if a lot of Hellions come at you. We will see. Let's see what Ryong decides to do here. I'll probably try and poke at the third base, which is, I imagine, where the Roach defenses will probably be concentrated. But you never know. You might want to keep the Roaches back because otherwise the Hellions just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to run right into the main then. Yeah, good luck dealing with that. Roaches aren't ready yet. Couple of links spot the Hellions coming out here. 2 more Hellions coming out. So, again, there's not really a lot on the field here for Ryong, and there's 4 Roaches being put out. I wonder if Ryong actually just stops building Hellions now and just goes into beastie macro mode. Because if he keeps building Hellions against Roaches, then it ends up being less and less cost-efficient the more he does it. So, it's not really the best way to do things, especially since you also don't get the ability to build Widowmines until later on either. Alright, there's the Queens. They're in good position with the Roaches as well. I mean, in this scenario, Ryong should really just hit the natural. And he might actually be able to catch a drone transfer, but he'll take a lot of damage if he does. He is not going to lose a... Yeah, he is going to lose a Hellion there. So Ryong makes his way into the main base, and now it is, of course, up to Yu-Gi-Oh! Not to take a huge amount of damage from this. Let's see how good the control is. The first shot goes off, roasts 1 drone. Ryong looking to try and line him up here. That was a good shot. Let's see if he can get another one off. He looks to get another one. He doesn't actually get the kill with it. We will find out how many kills he really got there in a second. That was, of course, with just 4 Hellions, but there was a lot more drones coming out. 30 more drones to replace that. 6 workers killed. That was worth it for 2 Hellions, definitely, but it doesn't really hold Yu-Gi-Oh! Back all that much. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was, of course, forced to build some roaches, which is not ideal here, but he is actually going up to 6 gas. 6 gas. Huge amount. With that amount of gas, it's almost certain that we will see... I don't know, the timing means that we might not see a Spire, but if you build 6 gas, you can build a Spire with only 2 up because you'll be able to catch up there. We may also see the Hydra Den. There we go. Just coming down. Hydralisk Den, Roach Hydra mid-game push, very, very, very strong here. That could work. 4 more barracks coming down here for Ryung, who is now looking to take his 3rd base. Hydra Den is on its way here. Upgrades-wise, we've got double ups coming out for both sides. We've got a very... It's actually completely even, really. The ranged attack upgrade is ahead for the Zerg player, but the armor's behind, so that really doesn't make that much of a difference. Roach speed coming out as well, so... There's the Hydra speed. So yeah, Roach Hydra composition. Yeah, it's pretty good. There is a concern, of course, with dying to Widow Mines, because Roaches have to bunch up really, really close, but with an Overseer in play, Widow Mines are quite easy to deal with. There is also the potential risk of drop play behind it for that big backstab. Armory coming up here for the upgrades, 4 reactors being added on. Now, he's not really at any risk of dying to a timing in, I would say, the next minute or so, because Muscular Augment isn't dealt with. We can still, he can still push Roaches towards the 3rd base and actually force a lift here, I feel, because there's actually very little on the field here for Ryung. He's got a lot of Widow Mines, but they don't kill Roaches all that quickly, and you could just send in 1 Roach at a time, micro it properly, and then just send the rest in, so... At the moment, though, Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't looking like he wants to be aggressive. He wants to build that Hydra Force up first. He wants to finish +1/+1, and then he hits. And if he actually hits at that timing, it could hurt a lot. It depends on, I think, how effective these Widow Mines end up being as either a deterrent or as actual doing real damage. There's going to be more Hydralisks than there is Marines here. We're going to have to see a lot of units coming out from Ryung. He can't really afford to slack on that. He must build more units. He needs to stop building everything else, really. It looks like he wants to go to 2-2, which is unfortunately slowing down his ability to get upgrades. Stim goes forward here. I said upgrades. I'm an idiot. Sorry, I've had like 3 hours sleep, so I'm a bit of a mess in this particular cast. This mid-game push from Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to be really, really strong, though. And the unit count is not that high for Ryung. It's going to be a bit dangerous. There's only 2 medevacs on the field. There will be 2 more by the time that this actually hits. And unfortunately, I think the army's actually going to get cut off here. Ryung should be able to get out, but this 3rd base is going to take a lot of damage. Again, it relies on just how effective these Widow Mines really are, and if Yu-Gi-Oh! Runs right into them, which he shouldn't. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has proven that he is absolutely up to the task of dealing with mines up to this point, and of course, with no drilling claws, he needs to be careful to engage here. That is a nice move by Yu-Gi-Oh! To push his Roaches right to the front there to try and deal with this. The Hydra count is really, really high here, so I think, honestly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Should be able to break this. In fact, he completely destroys it, and this 3rd base is dead, and there's no question about it. Yu-Gi-Oh!'s Hydra timing was absolutely perfect. Ryung was not able to deal with that at all. Widow Mine's now trying to deploy to defend against it, but he lost a lot of workers there. Ryung will be able to eventually push this back, I feel, especially with 2-2 on the way, building 8 Marines at a time, but this is going to be a tricky engagement. He lost a lot of workers there. 15 workers killed by Yu-Gi-Oh! That strike was very, very dangerous, and we're seeing Hive come behind this as well. Really nice moves coming in from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so ridiculous right now, it's not even funny. He is so good! My god. Now, let's see if Ryung can actually hold up against this. He's got more medevacs in the field right now, so he should be able to. There's Roaches at the front, but not a huge amount. There comes in another lift, so denying mining. Yu-Gi-Oh! Must be really happy with that, considering he's taken a 4th base behind that, and he's actually got it up and running. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually, in my opinion, one of the scariest Zergs I've ever seen right now. He is playing an amazing style. And Ryung is not able to drop, he's not able to harass, which is the real strength of Terran right there. And the late game transition is coming in from the Zerg player. So, can Ryung actually kill this army? And there goes the Widow Mine. It's actually killed before it's able to do anything. There's one going off, but Hydra's in the center right there. Another Widow Mine triggers going into the center as well. Ryung playing with a very small army here. He will be able to push this back. Yeah, now he's going to stim right into the center of those Hydralisks, and he is going to kill most of them. The problem is there's a lot of Marauders in that composition, which is actually kind of rubbish against what he's fighting, but he will eventually be able to kill it. So Ryung is able to stabilize here, but to what end? His opponent is now building Infestors. He is about to finish 2-2, and he is looking for a transition. He's bringing Burrow into play as well, which is nice. He'll be able to do Infest the Terran Harass into this area as well. Ryung's going to push out, and the creep spread behind this has been great as well. So We could see a big late-game scenario coming in from both players. The +3 armor's now started, +2 weapons is about to finish, but upgrades-wise, things are pretty even for both these guys. 5th base being taken, Yu-Gi-Oh! Getting nice and greedy. Ryung now actually has the ability to drop and start to push these Widow Mines forward here, but if anything, we've seen from Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that Widow Mines just don't work very well against him. He has great control against Widow Mines. There's a stim going in. Hydra's moving in. Great split against that fungal growth there. It does hit a couple of medevacs, but not really a big deal. Queen dies as well there. Ryung actually doesn't have a big army, but he is moving in additional units here. Redeploying those Widow Mines as best he can. Needs to avoid getting all of his medevacs fungled. Fungal hits is not really all that effective. Reinforcements now coming in for the Terran player. Will there be enough? Widow Mine burrows, and it actually triggers and hits the Hydras in a pretty big way here. Ryung continues to push forward. He doesn't quite have the units, though. The Hydras are able to throw that back. If he keeps streaming in reinforcements, then I'd say this third base is under a lot of pressure. Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't actually have any Infestor energy left. There's a lot more Hydras coming up, but there's 39 Marines, and they will engage very well against this. Let's see if Yu-Gi-Oh! Can actually hold up against it. In comes that Widow Mine once again. Actually ends up triggering on the Queen rather than anything else. Ryung continues the pressure here. This might be a position where Ryung could actually drop into the main base and do big damage. Third base has now been taken out. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is struggling against this now. Since he didn't kill the third base, which I'm pretty sure that timing was designed to do, Ryung's now in a good position economically and is now able to snipe that base. In comes the drop, and the medevac actually gets killed. That was a mistake there by Ryung. It was sniped off by the Queen. Bad move there by Ryung, and this is going to get pushed back by the looks of it. The fungal hits a few units as well. He's going to take some medevacs for free. Really nice play there by Yu-Gi-Oh! Great hold, and since the drop failed completely, while he did kill that base, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still in a great spot. Ryung didn't engage as well as he could have there. He's going to swing around now and try to continue to push the creep back. Now, what we see on Newkirk more often than not is Terran versus Zerg that actually cuts the map in half and ends up being a really, really lengthy game. It actually goes super endgame. It can be quite entertaining, but it can also drag on forever. Now, what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not doing is making the mistake that Hyun often does, which is to stay on Roach Hydra for too long. He is adding in endgame units. He's getting +3/+3. Adding Vipers into this composition might be very effective in combination with the Infestors. We're not seeing any big endgame units coming out yet. I don't think there's a Spire, so we're not going to be seeing any Vipers yet. There is, of course, no Ultralisk Cavern, so he's going to end up relying on Roach Hydralisk, which doesn't work for that long. Ryung actually needs to focus here. He is missing obvious potential to do damage. He pushes the mineral line back, but it doesn't actually do any more than it could have. He could have killed Static Defense here. He could have gone after the drone line, but he didn't. It's like he wasn't really focusing on the drop. He just relied on it sort of doing something. There's only one Marine actually doing anything. So this is not the kind of mistakes that, in my opinion, that you can really make against Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is playing pretty much a perfect game, and as a direct result, you just can't do that. Ling's now going to make a run by onto the 4th base, which is great because it's going to pull Ryung's army all the way back here. The Planetary Fortress is not done, and these units will kill that Planetary before it goes up. It's going to be a lot of SCV damage potentially done here as well. But even if it doesn't kill a Planetary or any workers, it pulls Ryung's army back, which means that Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually gets into position and starts to spread his creep again. So that works out pretty well for him. Tech-wise, going for that +3/+3. He is already up against +3/+3. 3 armor is already done. There's a slight lead here. In fact, there's a nice timing that Ryung could hit, I feel, where he's going to be maxed out and he's going to have 3/3 and his opponent won't. So this could be really, really damaging. Another drop comes in here by Ryung, who is not focusing on anything really. He's shooting at the Extractor, which is not doing anything. He is focused more on this engagement. He actually got flanked there quite nicely. That really cuts off the reinforcements. Fungal comes in and hits the Widow Mines. Nice play. Really lovely play there by Yu-Gi-Oh! The Widow Mines actually used as a rear guard. Here's the thing, though. Ryung can't get out of this right now. He has cut himself into a corner. If his opponent manages to successfully flank him and stop him, then it's going to be horrible. But I think with an army of that size, with the current +3/+3 advantage, which maintains for another 20 or so seconds, Ryung is okay. But if he gets greedy and tries to take down another base, then maybe this Roach Hydra army kills it, especially with good fungal growths. We'll see. Yu-Gi-Oh! Now moving in defensive position. He is getting greedy. He's going for it right now. The fungal hits, and it's a good one. Second fungal follows that one up. That was really nice there for Yu-Gi-Oh! Absolutely fantastic. Catches that army out and cuts the army supply in half really nicely. And a big Roach attack comes towards the 3rd base. This will be deflected quite easily. There are enough units to actually kill that, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Admittedly, these upgrades are proving to be difficult with a marine-heavy force. Roaches don't die all that quickly. He has another attack, and that's actually going to snipe the hatchery as well. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is now down to 1.5 functional mining bases. Planetary now up for Ryung is really, really good, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Has the larger army. So what Ryung now needs to do is to pull back and defend against the big push that's coming. If he successfully defends that, then he is in a great economic spot, and he should be able to power through this game. Ryung going for a little bit of a drop. Nothing too large. I think that, you know, a 3-3 drop against this kind of static defense, which is nigh non-existent, is absolutely effective. And it might pull Yu-Gi-Oh! Apart a little bit. Yu-Gi-Oh's creep spread has been pushed back past this particular area here, which is that Zelnaga Watchtower. It's not halfway across the map, so this drop should work, and there's actually no overload coverage there as well, so it's not going to be spotted coming in. Still, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is relying on Hydralisks. He is not adding in Vipers, and we're not seeing Ultra or Broodlord transition. It's kind of wonky to do that because you've got 3-3 upgrades. We're not going to see Ultralisks. I don't see any scenario where you see Ultralisks in this battle. Oh, wow, this entire time, Muscular Augments haven't actually been done. That's weird. He must have cancelled it, because I know he was researching it. So these Hydras are actually super slow right now, which means that the engagement's going to be very, very awkward for them. We're going to see some Widow Mines moving into play. The Infestors are kind of trapped in the center here. Fungal Growth comes down on the right flank and on the left as well. Great Fungals here from Yu-Gi-Oh! In the meantime, the drop comes in and is going to work on this hatchery here. There is enough army, I feel, to push this back. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a tough spot. Axiom is not, however, controlling this. He's not controlling it. He was focused on this drop. He kills that base, which means that Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually has only half a functional mining base right now. This one just finished, but this push could come in as well. Yu-Gi-Oh! Must beat this army convincingly and then do some damage to his opponent. The problem is on Newkirk that the army gets, the actual map gets split in half, and when you've got a slow army like this, which right now, you know, you don't have Hydra speed for, you end up in a tough spot. You can't really harass. Ling run-bys don't work on Planetary Fortresses, as you're well aware. So, great Fungals here. Really good Fungals. Are there enough Fungals to keep this actually held in position, though? There's a lot of Medivacs to try and keep this alive. Ryung tries to move around the side here. This army is getting battered on both sides here, but I think he's got enough to push through. Ryung smashes that. Turns out, no. He decides it's not a good idea. I think he could have beaten that, but I think he would have lost too many units. The problem with his composition is that a lot of the Marines died, and Marauders are just rubbish against Hydras. So he has to push back again, and he has to reinforce. He is, however, building 9 Marines and 4 Marauders at a time, and also adding in more Widow Mines to make this really awkward. The Widow Mines haven't really done much other than provide a... They're providing very much a rear guard, yeah? They're not actually killing anything, but they are forcing the Zerg player to be more cautious. The Zerg player can't charge in because he risks running into Widow Mines. It's also a case of Fungals are being used on the Widow Mines as well, rather than the main army. Nice drop comes in right here. Ryung actually needs to control it, though, and he will force a cancel, and then he should be able to get out of here. Oh, no cancel. So, once again, not good for Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a really tough spot now. He's had a lot of bases sniped off, and Ryung is looking really strong. So I think a push towards this base probably kills it, unless, again, we see miraculous Fungals from Yu-Gi-Oh! Great Stim coming in, kills off 1 Infestor already. These Fungals, this time around, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is prepared for that, and the Fungals actually whiff and don't really hit a lot of the army. There's a huge amount of Medivacs here, is on 15. Fungal lands again. Yu-Gi-Oh! Trying to hold on here. Again, this Marauder-heavy composition just doesn't work that well against Hydras, but there aren't enough Hydras for it to actually matter. The push goes through, and this base is most likely going to die right now. There is no Fungal energy left to make that work. Ryung, again, not controlling this. Needs to focus, and now he's finally going to go kill this base. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a really tough spot now. He's trying to reestablish his bases as much as possible, but the army of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is getting battered here. There's a lot of production coming out here from Ryung, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't have the economy to sustain this. Another drop comes in, and even without Stim, this is going to kill this mineral line very, very quickly. Ryung pushing forward to try and end this, and let's see if he can make that happen. Another Widow Mine pops off and actually hits the Overlords, which is not that useful at all, and there's the GG, and Ryung pulls his team ahead once again, 4-2 in this series against Root Gaming, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Could very well come back out again. That's a possibility. We could see that happen. Do we see Yu-Gi-Oh! Come out again for the Ace, or do we see Sage be brought out? Those are the two most likely possibilities. It's unlikely we'll see a North American player brought out as the Ace in this scenario. Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Sage? We'll find out very shortly, folks. Don't go anywhere. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the next game? This could potentially be our final matchup here. Yu-Gi-Oh!, as predicted, has been brought out as the Ace for Team Root. Let's see if it is enough to deal with this man. In the blue trunks, playing Terran to the southeast of Belshir Vestige, it is Axiom Ryung. Versus his opponent, once again, in the red trunks, playing Zerg to the northwest, it is Root's Yu-Gi-Oh! For those of you who are just tuning into this tournament, welcome. It's a great tournament. You should tune in more often. If you missed it, there's a lot of VODs on my Starcraft channel, youtube.com/TotalBiscuit. Please check out Karante versus Mouse Sports. It is mind-blowingly good. You have no idea. That tournament event was just great. That was one of the best of 9 team series I've ever seen in the history of Starcraft 2. I'd strongly recommend you look at it. Anyway, the rules for Acer Teamstory Cup are as follows. Once you get down to your last map, you can bring out any player as an ace. That means that it is possible to actually bring along the same player again. In fact, it is possible in some scenarios to actually have the same player 3 times, because twice in this tournament you are allowed to revive a player. Root, I think, might have used all the revives now, so I don't think that's really an option for them, but bringing out Yu-Gi-Oh! Makes a lot of sense. It's either that or you bring out Sage. If you bring out Sage, I think you meet the potency of Ryung's new TVP. Let's just say that that is the kind of mistake that was made by LGIM in the GSTL. They thought that you could snipe Ryung with a Protoss, and you can't. You actually can't. Ryung's TVP right now is ridiculously silly. Like, I don't know what happened to the guy, but he didn't used to be good at this matchup. This used to be his weakest matchup by far. And now it's one of his strongest, which I think a lot of people are surprised by this. They say, oh, you know, Ryung's a TVT sniper. No, actually, Ryung's just good at everything now, which is really scary. I know I'm blowing up my own player here, but really, he is very, very good. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Makes the best sense, in my opinion, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Has already proven that he's great against Terran. He beat Heart convincingly. He had some great builds. His control, in my opinion, his control has actually been better than Ryung's. And I know that sounds like I'm bashing on my own player, but what we saw was a lot of drops from Ryung that weren't properly controlled. We saw a lot of engagements that weren't necessarily well taken, and he still won. And his drop play and his strategy was great, but his control, I don't think, was as good as Yu-Gi-Oh's. Yu-Gi-Oh! Versus Widow Mines is actually one of the most awe-inspiring things to watch I've ever seen. You see a Zerg player that is consistently doing well and dealing with Widow Mines in an extremely awesome fashion. So we'll see. Does Ryung tighten up here? What does Yu-Gi-Oh! Do? Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going for... Apparently some people are claiming I'm clipping. That shouldn't be possible. I haven't changed my levels at all. Is it clipping or crackling? Unfortunately, since I'm on a broadcast delay, I'm not going to find out for another couple of minutes. But if it's crackling, that'll go away. If it's clipping, then that shouldn't even be happening. So I can adjust that, but I need to know. I guess I'll find out in 2 minutes when the chat actually catches up to me. Anyway, we saw here the pool going down. 3 hatches up, so Yu-Gi-Oh! In a decent spot. He got this hatch blocked, so he had to go pool first. That's the only way he could really deal with it, and he got a couple of links out, the cancellation went out, so what Ryung did essentially blocked the 3 hatch before pool build. That's pretty cool. Considering that he saw that his opponent went for that, and that it was a really dangerous build, it's a good move to use the engineering bay to block off that and force your opponent down a slightly different build and tech path that you're probably a little bit more comfortable with. Ryung's looking pretty solid right now. He's going for that greedy third command center build. His CC is down the low ground and is now already an orbital command, so that's a good economic position for the Terran player to be in. That also then leaves the next move really up to Yu-Gi-Oh! What you will see is most likely Hellions, just to gain a little bit of map control. The speed is going to be out quicker because, of course, it was a pull before that third hatch, and we're going to see that speed come out. So it's up to Ryung to try and defend against this, and we need to see whether or not Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually decides to get really aggressive. A couple of Hellions out on the field. If we see a swell of lings, then obviously he's going to get aggressive. Building a few roaches might help, but I don't really rate it, especially not with the tech lab already going down here on the barracks. It would be easy to defend that. So we might just see an economically focused play by Yu-Gi-Oh! If that's the case, then it's really up to Ryung to try and do a little bit of damage with some Hellions. 16 lings coming out. Again, that can be for both. If you see Hellions come out in the field, you need those lings anyway, because if you don't build a Roach Warren, then you can't defend unless you've got a lot of lings. So it looks like we're not seeing a Roach Warren here from Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I like. It's funny, we're going back to the old Wings of Liberty meta, where the old meta of Terran versus Zerg went something like this, right? You ended up with your opponent going Hellions. So you were pretty much kind of forced down a Roach path. And this is actually going to suck. He's not ready to defend against this at all. This is a great little run by here by Yu-Gi-Oh! And catching his opponent completely off guard. There we go. Hellion's now in defensive position, but he's done so much damage with this. He takes down the bunker as well. There's going to be drones behind this, so there's going to be no follow-up aggression, and the Hellions will eventually deal with it, but looks like he's even going to lose a supply depot as well. It was totally worth it, killing 4 workers, forcing mining time lost, killing a bunker, and he might even lose the supply depot here as well. Ryung defends against this quite nicely, as well as he could have expected to, but this is an economically focused piece of harassment here from Yu-Gi-Oh! He's able to drone hard behind this, and he puts down his double evolution chambers, which is going to be pretty important because we're actually, yeah, we are seeing double evo here from Ryung. Ryung's going to be a bit ahead in terms of his upgrades, but the last thing you want is for him to get too far ahead. Ryung needs to get back to mining, though. His actual income now is okay because of mules, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. Yu-Gi-Oh's is really healthy. So, what do the Hellions do? Well, they can go and harass. In fact, that's actually a really good idea. There's 22 Zerglings on the way. Depends on Ryung's control as to how effective that is. 22 Speedlings should shut down 6 Hellions in ideal scenarios, but you never know. It's so difficult to predict. There's 4 Queens on the field as well, and creep spread is looking pretty good. Ryung will look to try and do damage to the third base here. And he should be able to do something, actually. But that's been spotted pretty early, so the Lings are now moving into position. If Yu-Gi-Oh! Successfully defends against this, then he's way far ahead. Ryung's got to do damage to try and compensate for the workers and mining time he lost. Here it comes. The flank's coming in. Will Ryung be able to control properly? The surround is coming in here by Yu-Gi-Oh! And actually, it's not very good. Is it going to be good enough? It's done some damage. Oh, he grabs 2 on the end. There we go. So he shut down that aggression entirely. Nice move there by Yu-Gi-Oh! Initially, it wasn't a great surround, but it then turned into one when he was able to catch those 2 Hellions out. So that's fine. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was now going to kill this Hellion by the looks of it, and he will then be going up against 2 Hellions, and he doesn't have to worry at all. So, next transition. Yu-Gi-Oh! Now builds a Spire. Okay, cool. Absolutely fine. He's on 6 gas, so he's going to be able to produce a lot of Mutalisks. There's not a lot of Marines or anything really up on the field for Ryung. This is the kind of time where Ryung needs to strongly consider getting some static defense. He's only building 1 Marine at a time. He's also building Widow Mines, which again is fine if your opponent makes a mistake. And if we've seen anything, Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't make mistakes against Widow Mines, so... Putting the armory back here as well might actually be a mistake. And the reason I say this is because this is eminently snipeable by Mutas. Like, Mutas can sit here and kind of dodge in and out and kill that armory, which would actually be a huge advantage there for the Zerg. So that could very much work against Ryung. This is a perfectly timed run by here to try and deny this third base from going down, and Ryung doesn't actually have enough of an army. Ooh, that was a bit of a pop-off there by the Widowmine. Now he has enough of an army to defend that, so... Widowmine does a good job. But we're going to be seeing Muta play very shortly, I would think. I don't know, actually. There's so little gas. Like, when is the Muta actually going to hit? He just started a bunch of upgrades, so he's not building Mutas. He can't. He hasn't got any... Okay, he is building Mutas. He's building 3 of them. Does he just build them for drop defense, or does he just slowly build that army up? Usually you want a big swell of them, so you can hit it at a nice timing, but when he starts 3 upgrades at once, and then builds a bunch of roaches, that's actually not what he's doing at all. So this is a kind of weird build here. I think maybe you pressure the front and then dodge in with Mutas, but 4 Mutas doesn't really do anything. If you build a missile turret, that kills 4 Mutalisks, so you don't need to worry about it. So it's an odd one, and maybe it's just for drop defense. I think that's a possibility. 4 Mutalisks is pretty good for drop defense. We're seeing Baneling speed moving in as well, so we might just see this big Baneling and Roach attack. It's still very strange. Oh, wow. 16 Banelings coming in? Yeah, that's pretty brutal. If Ryung's caught out of position with this one, he is going to be in a horrible spot. Admittedly, he does have Widow Mines, so Banelings don't tend to do all that well against that. Even with Yu-Gi-Oh's control, I feel that the amount of Widow Mines he's building might be good. Mutas are going to be kind of annoying. I have to wonder if this is more of a fake to say to Ryung, hey, I've got 4 Mutalisks. You better move out, because there might be others. This is giving map control to Yu-Gi-Oh, of course, but it also forces the Terran player into a defensive position, which is exactly where he needs to be right now. Last thing he wants to do is be caught out in the middle of the map against Speed Banelings. Alright, Speed Banes are on the way. Here comes the attack. There are Widow Mines in position. However, he is going to be sending... Oh! A lot of Banelings went up against that one. That was half the Baneling count obliterated almost immediately. Can Ryung actually successfully split against this army, though? He doesn't have much of an army. He's only got 25 Marines and a couple of Widow Mines here. Ryung is going to try his best to defend. He's going to try and drag his opponent over another Widow Mine. Oh, that didn't trigger as well. That was nice. It then kills the Overseer. So Yu-Gi-Oh actually doesn't have any detection, but he snipes a bunch of workers at the third base. That one rolling Baneling desperately wants that mule, but it's not going to get it. Let me in! Let me in! Not a good idea. If you let him in, the Roaches come in here. Great moves by Yu-Gi-Oh right now as Ryung desperately tries to defend against it. Not enough Widow Mines. SCV's coming off the line. You know, these Marines need to get into position right now to take it. He can defend it, but this move was big. Really big. A lot of SCVs were killed here. That was really damaging. The Roaches are going to be driven in. More Lings actually coming into position here. The Widow Mines did a decent job, but look at the number of workers killed. 38. The third base is lifted right now. Yu-Gi-Oh is in a good spot. Tech-wise, Ryung has an advantage. He's about to have 2-2, so if he starts to pick his opponent apart here, he's going to be in a good spot, but he's on 36 workers and 3 CCs. That's not so good at all. Really isn't. He's got to make sure that he engages effectively with his army. I think some Widow Mines might have actually killed some SCVs there. Actually, some Marines there as well, which is not good. These drops have got to be really effective to get him back in this game, in my opinion. Drilling Claws is a good addition, especially if his opponent plays a more Banelings-heavy style, but he's going Hive again. We might see that Broodlord style coming out against Heavy Widow Mine, which, as we saw, is extremely effective. Another Harass comes down. That is now shut down by Ryung, and we're going to now need to see some drop action, okay? So that's what's going to have to happen. Let's see. He's the third base defender. He's actually skipped out on static defense, which is not something Yu-Gi-Oh! Usually does. That could prove to be very, very dangerous. More Banelings morphing in, trying to get a focus fire. He needs to move away from that. He can't take big hits. He moves. That was nice. That engagement against it was really, really good. He's got to watch out for those Widow Mines actually detonating against his own army here. A couple more are going to trigger by the looks of it. Here comes the drop. That shut down the fourth base, or the third base, in fact, for the time being. Ryung's going to be able to defend against this quite handily. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually falling in supply pretty badly, and he GG's, and Ryung takes the series right then and there. And I guess the reality of the situation was that Roach Baneling attack was supposed to kill Ryung. The fact that it didn't means that Ryung was able to get the upgrade advantage. He was able to drop. The Roaches were caught out in the middle of the map. The army was killed, and suddenly that supply advantage melts away. 2-2 upgrades come into effect. Ryung slaps his opponent down, and that ends the series. Ryung closing out this series for Axiom 5-2, which, to be honest, considering Axiom has not been doing that well on the Acer Teamstory Cup so far, is kind of a big deal. So that gives them a very, very good amount of points going forward, and a strong win against a strong set of players. Yu-Gi-Oh! Very much carrying his team here, the only player to get any wins on the board today. Two American players didn't really do an awful lot, unfortunately. They were killed by Alicia. Sage was killed off by Alicia, and then we had a couple of big wins there by Ryung against Yu-Gi-Oh! After Yu-Gi-Oh! Was able to take out both Alicia and Hart. Well, there you go. 5-2 for Axiom. Well played by both sides. Yu-Gi-Oh! Playing really, really well there, but not quite enough to best Ryung. Thank you very much for watching the Acer Teamstory Cup. I would encourage you to go and check out WCS Europe. That started about 45 minutes ago, I think. So please go and check that out. Go on to teamliquid.net and you will see exactly what is going on there. That is the action coming in from the Premier Division. I believe 4GG is playing, which is always good. I think Bunny is playing, as well as Sase and one other player whose name I forget. All right, folks, I'm done for the night, or the day. I'm going to go and try and get some work done and probably drink about 3 cups of coffee. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry for the crappy casting, and I will see you next time.